Welcome to Saturday's Warrior, the channel where we talk all things BYU, Big 12. We also cover realignment here. But today we are looking at BYU's Week 7 matchup against Arizona. And to join us and give us a deeper look into BYU's opponent this week is our friend and representative from the college huddle for Arizona is Adam Green, and he is with Wildcat Radio 2.0. Adam, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's like a rivalry renewed, right? Like it's a lot of what the Big 12 schedule is for Arizona. So excited to play BYU. That's I guess the next big game on Arizona's schedule.
Yeah, it is a fun one. One that calls back to the old WAC days. Well before I was really getting into any of this, but I think it's a matchup that we've seen played relatively frequently, considering we haven't been in a conference for a long time over the last many years, and even a few times over over the last several during the Coach Satake era. So it is a lot of fun to have Arizona. I know, especially with the proximity to the state of Utah and the large, LDS community in the state, that it definitely makes for a great rivalry there. Before we get started, though, I do want to say this is a weekly segment we do each week. Know the foe, know your foe that we do, where we invite on guests primarily from the college huddle to give us this look. But we also do live reactions after the games, and we also do other content throughout the week. So to make sure you catch all that, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. And also, Adam, let's go ahead and plug you now real quick before we get into it. Where can everybody that's interested go find you guys and all your content?
Yeah, we do Wildcat Radio 2.0. We record once a week, usually on Thursdays or so. Schedules and everything. We try to balance things out. In basketball season, it used to make a lot of sense depending on the old Pac-12 schedule. So we're going to figure that out as we go. But Wildcat Radio AZ is our Twitter handle. We're on iTunes. We're on Spotify. And then if you want to read some of the other written content, I write for azdesertswarm.com, which is the SB Nation site covering Arizona. Do pretty much a weekly column. So I'll have something probably either tomorrow or Thursday from that as well. So, Wildcat Radio 2.0, iTunes, Spotify, on the Twitter, Wildcat Radio AZ. I think I got it there. But otherwise, some written content, that's from me.
Awesome. Love it. I'll definitely have to go check that out because I'm really excited about this matchup and looking into it. Arizona is a team that I've had my eye on this season. Tried to watch some of the games to get more familiar with the team, especially after the very successful season you had last year. Obviously, some turnover in terms of the coaching staff and even some players in the offseason. Can you walk us through a little bit what happened there with Jedd Fisch, and also why, because there is quite a bit of hostility from the Arizona fan base towards him. So what led to that being such kind of a harsh breakup?
Yeah, as it stands, obviously, Arizona football hasn't been that good, right? Not for a while. And Jedd Fisch, his first game with Arizona was actually against BYU in Las Vegas. If remember, it was a fairly close game, and then the rest of the season wasn't very good. But Fisch was hired back in 2021 or the end of 2020. I think it was December 2020, and he wasn't going to be a head coach anywhere else. He's like, "Oh, I want to be a college head coach. This is where I want to be." Whatever. Wins one game the first year, wins 5 the next year, then wins 10 last season. And it's like, wow, this guy is like a gem, right? Arizona finally got their guy. He's been recruiting well. He did everything right off the field, said everything right. We knew he was kind of like a used car salesman, but he was getting the job done. And he seemed to be behind Arizona. And as the season went on, there was a lot of talk about getting him a contract extension. And in Arizona, the Board of Regents, they only allow it to 5 years at a time. So you can't give like a 10-year deal or a 7-year deal or an 8-year deal. That just doesn't happen. And of course, Arizona as a school had their budget shortfall, which was pretty big headlines. They weren't out of money. They weren't short money. Just like their projections were off from what they had. So you put that all together, and the extension did not get done during the season. And that was fine because you and Fisch was like, no, this is where I want to be. We're working on it. We're going to get it done. Not a problem. Still recruiting and all that. And then they win the Alamo Bowl, and it's like, just get it done. I think he went on Jim Rome's show shortly after, and he's like, why would I leave? I think they asked him about other jobs. Like, why would I leave? I got 18 or 22 starters coming back. We just won 10 games. Could win the Big 12. Go to the playoff. Like, this is where I want to be. And then 4 days later, he's off to Washington. And I think that was bad enough for a lot of people. I forget the athletic director's name for Washington, who's now I think at Nebraska. But like he went down to Tucson. They did a video where there's like a U of A flag in front of Jedd Fisch's house as he's going in there to have Fisch sign the contract for Washington. And then of course the next 48 hours or so, 72 hours, there's that a lot of stress of, well, who's he going to take with him? Who's he going to poach? Which players? This from this 18 of 22 starters coming back, who's going to leave the best team in Arizona history, basically, or especially recent history? And I think that's where a lot of the angst came from. The angst and even the anger towards Jedd Fisch is that not that people thought he'd be in Tucson for the long haul. Like he was never a Tucson guy, right? We always thought he wanted to go to maybe Florida, his alma mater, just a bigger program. I don't think people thought he would leave with most of that roster coming back, a 10-win team coming back, and then that he tried to poach a lot of the players. He got some. Jonah Coleman, starting running back. He got Ephesians Prysock, one of the starting cornerbacks. Pretty much the entire 2024 recruiting class. The big guys all went to Washington or went elsewhere. So that hurt. And I think for a lot of Arizona fans, like, okay, we believed in you. This was the guy. Like, we were behind you 100%. We thought you should get that contract extension. And then you leave for Washington. Okay, big money. It's hard to turn that down. But why you got to try to raid the roster? And fortunately, he didn't. He wasn't successful in getting most of the players, T-Mac, Fafita, like the other guys, Tacario Davis. They stuck around, which is why Arizona had high expectations going into this season. But, Brett and I on our show, my podcast co-host, Brett on Wildcat Radio, we always talk, it's like, it's better to have your coaches poached than you have to fire them, right? You get paid to have them leave as opposed to you paying them to leave. But just for Arizona, which seemed like it was on the cusp of something truly special, something unique, especially for Arizona, and then just have the rug ripped out from under them just like that hurt. So that's where the anger comes from. And I guess that's how Brent Brennan ended up in Tucson.
I guess we could, as BYU fans, we can somewhat empathize. We're in kind of a unique situation where, at least in terms of football and basketball, generally, that is kind of a unique role that are generally types of people that want to be there, are BYU guys, or definitely in some way, shape, or form, kind of representatives of the church overall. And so Mark Pope, we all kind of knew he wasn't really a BYU guy through and through for basketball, but when he left for Kentucky, it caught us, I think, off guard a little bit because nobody expected him to get that job. So I think the suddenness of it, and he definitely made some attempts at the roster as well. Took one of our key recruits that we'd been waiting for him to return from his mission for 2 years, but we kept the others and maintained the others, and now people are more excited about basketball than ever. So, so I mean, that is a good thing with Arizona that you mentioned. A lot of the players stayed. So what do you think was really behind them wanting to remain at Arizona, especially with kind of a coach coming up that was relatively unknown? Was it the coach? Was it the school? Was it what was behind that?
I think it's a lot of things, and the NIL got better too. I think there was some of the main boosters down in Tucson saw what Fisch did and thought it was like a slap in the face to them, and they're like, "Okay, we'll show you. We're going to pay to keep these guys around." I mean, a lot of the stories came out. We read that Noah Fafita and Tetrarch McMillan are kind of like the linchpins, right? The key guys, your quarterback, your stud wide receivers, a first-round pick, probably a top 15 pick in next year's NFL draft. And when the news first happened, I think they've even said like Fafita was thinking about leaving. That he was like, hey, that's my coach. I should probably follow him to Washington. And no doubt Washington would have taken him. Fisch would have taken him. But McMillan wanted to stay. He's like, I like it here. This is where I want to be. And they kind of talked it out and decided to stay. I think Noah Fafita said he like read a fortune cookie or something that said, I forget exactly what it was. I don't want to like put words into their mouth. They have their like a video show where they talk about it. Really fun show. But like the fortune cookie says something to the effect of like, like something about staying, or what you had, like the best thing is what you had, or something like that. It kind of is like, okay, I'm sure the cookie isn't what got him to stick around in Tucson. But once Fafita and McMillan decided to stay, then it allowed for some of the other guys who maybe would have thought it was like, you know what? The special season that could exist that we thought was going to be there could still happen. Awesome. So that's when, Dalton Johnson, Gunnar Maldonado, Traden Stukes, they announced like the three of them at the same time they were coming back. And then you got Jonas Savanea, who I'm really bad with names. There's some tough names here. And then it's kind of like one after the other. And there were some guys, because you have that 15-day window after a coach leaves where they could leave. And some like Prysock, he left. Coleman left. There were some guys who dragged it out a little bit. Some guys who were just in the portal and gone the second it opened. But like the longer it went on, like, okay, they're sticking around. And then they gave Brennan and his staff a chance because there's that second portal window after spring ball where it's like, okay, we'll see what they think of the coach. Like they gave him a chance. And a lot of the players, if they would have left even then, they could have found homes at some pretty good schools. I remember like there was a report like Alabama wanted Fafita and T-Mac at one point. It's like, so they had options at all these guys. So they could have
take him.
Yeah, like they could have gone anywhere. So I think, once they stuck around through spring ball and gave the coaching staff a chance, it's like, okay, well, let's see if they like these guys, if they believe in the coaches. And at that point, it was clear they did. So between, and it's just like their old brotherhood. And I don't think you can discount that. Brent Brand has talked about that a lot. There's a big Polynesian culture, the influence with Arizona's roster. I'm sure BYU can kind of relate to that, where they wanted to stick together. Like they're connected. They want to make sure they finish the job as they see it. So you put all that together and you have a roster that decide by and large to run it back. And, of course, it hasn't gone as well as people thought it would or hoped it would early on this season. But, it's like that togetherness. Like, so I think they believe in each other. They believe in their mission to win in Tucson, to kind of turn the program or U of A football into something it hasn't been in a long time. They probably got better NIL, and they do believe in the coaching staff, or at least they did going into the season.
Well, that's a good transition. So let's get into that because honestly, though, in an era when it is in vogue to transfer, I mean, now we're seeing how many mid-season people deciding to take their red shirt and transfer, announcing that mid-season at what I imagine is record numbers. I don't know if I'd seen this before. Everyone's transferring at any chance that they can to find greener pasture. So I really respect this, and it's something that's endeared this Arizona team to me that I'd like to see them do well for that reason. Obviously not this week, but going forward, I'd like to see them do well. But so because both of us have kids and it, different time zones, trying to match up our schedules is tough. So I do want to get us going through this because it's late enough that I feel like I'm watching a BYU night game on a Saturday night. My eyes are starting to burn a little, but you'd mentioned they at least did believe in the coaching staff. So talk to me a little bit, because Brennan was, I would say, relatively unknown at San Jose State prior to coming to Arizona. So tell us a little bit, what is his coaching philosophy? What can we expect from his teams, and what have you seen so far in the season?
So that's a good question. Like, he wasn't totally unknown, at least to Arizona people. He was, I think, an assistant or a grad assistant in Tucson under Dick Tomey, so he had a connection to the program. He met his wife in Tucson at U of A, so that's why Arizona is kind of a dream job for him, even though he's not an alum of Arizona. And he was the runner-up, as far as we knew, to Jedd Fisch back in the 2020 when he was hired. So that's why it was kind of the quick, okay, Fisch left, bring in Brennan. He wanted the job. They had already interviewed him and done all that. And he'd had some success at San Jose State with a pretty balanced offense. They use the tight end quite a bit, but they would run the ball, they would throw, they weren't slinging the ball all around the field. It just seemed like a balanced approach. And, that was the expectation going into the season. They even said they're not going to try to reinvent the wheel. Like, this was a team that lit up the scoreboard last season, brought back most of their players. Why would you just change it all up? Dino Babers came in, was the offensive coordinator. He's since been replaced as the play caller by Matt Atkins, who was a tight end coach, passing game coordinator, which they said that was kind of the plan all along. I don't really believe that myself, but the offense wasn't looking good the first few weeks. It was clunky. And, especially that Kansas State game in, they came out against Utah the next week and they were very balanced. Fafita made a couple of great throws on their drive that kind of put the game away. They ran the ball okay against a pretty tough Utah defense. And then we thought, okay, maybe Atkins the play caller, maybe this is working. And then last week against Texas Tech, they moved the ball up and down the field. They just couldn't score once they got in the red zone. Kicked a lot of field goals, missed one late, and then ended up losing. So I'd love to tell you, like, this is what Brett Brennan's style is. This is the type of team he wants to have. But I think, 5 games into Arizona's season, we're not even sure. It'd be easy to say you have Fafita, you have to Torrent McMillan. They're going to throw the ball up and down the field. And yeah, they may try to, but they haven't done that successfully. They have run the ball okay. They're not a great running team, but they're not a bad running team. They do have T-Mac, who's just an otherworldly receiver, but they've struggled to get the other guys involved, the rest of the passing game. Kean Burnett, a tight end, has played better of late. There's been a lot of talk that he was ready for a breakout season. He's just been banged up some, but he's made some big catches, had the big touchdown against Utah. You probably saw that highlight in the back of the end zone. Great catch, even better throw probably. So, I would love to, this isn't me trying to be cagey or anything. I would love to be like, this is the type of team Arizona is. And there's been a lot of talk about they don't really have an identity. They don't know what type of offense they are trying to be. Are they trying to be a team that just chucks the ball deep, goes for the big play? Are they trying to be a dink and dunk team? And watching them and watching Fafita through the first 5 games, it seems like he's trying, I think, big play hunting, where there might be a quicker read underneath, and he just doesn't take it, and he forces it to T-Mac, or he goes for the big play, and that wasn't who he was last season. So if Arizona's trying to be that team, maybe, or if he's trying to be that quarterback for whatever reason, also maybe, or a combination of both. I think Arizona, if they're at their best with what Brennan wants to do, they want to get the tight end involved, and that's usually not deep passes down the field. A couple of shorter ones in this scene. They had a nice little shovel pass that didn't work against Texas Tech, but I loved the play call and the design. It just didn't work. Sometimes that happens. But, you have T-Mac occasionally. If he's got single coverage down the field, they're probably going to throw him the ball, as well they should. But if Arizona's at their best, they're going to be using more of those intermediate routes, taking those dump offs quicker. There was one late against Texas Tech where I think if Fafita would have gotten out to Quali Conley, the running back, on the first read where he was wide open, he probably gets the first down easily. As it stood, he waited, looked around, then finally got to him, and he finished like 6 yards or 6 inches short of the first down. Arizona kicks the field goal for the lead instead of a touchdown for a bigger lead. Like little things like that, where just hasn't been the Fafita we saw last season. It hasn't been the offense we saw last season. And it wouldn't be the same offense. No matter how much they want to keep it the same, you don't have Jedd Fisch calling plays. So it's like, what does this Arizona team do best? And I'm not sure the coaching staff knows that yet, which makes them probably interesting to game plan for BYU's sake, possibly scary, because if Arizona figures out who they are, there is talent there. They do have skill position talent. They have good running backs. They have an offensive line that is improving after having to shuffle around a little bit with injuries and replacing guys from last season, and a quarterback who hasn't been that great this season, Fafita, but we know he can be. He's capable of making every single throw. He doesn't get rattled. And if he's on, he's one of the top quarterbacks in the country. So, what do they want to do? What does Brent Brennan want to do? Better than they have done things. But I think if things are going right, you're going to see a lot of the tight end and a balanced approach.
Yeah. So when I was looking kind of through the numbers and looking at this team, what I've seen is, and you mentioned this, they have that potential for big explosive plays. And of course you would with a, quarterback and receiver tandem like Arizona has, which is probably, one of the top, if not the top tandem in the Big 12. And, but it looked like Arizona, kind of like BYU, when forced to make long drives down the field, a lot of plays that find yourself in a lot of 3 and long situations and in tough situations and kind of stall out, which is something that BYU's seen a bit of this season. So what, I guess, what would be the key? And don't worry, I don't have any BYU coaching staff watching the show, but what would be the key to slowing this offense down? Like, what did Kansas State do that really shut down this offense?
Let's say, just in case there are BYU coaches watching the show, I would say triple team Jeremiah Patterson. No, I mean, it's what they did. They got pressure on Fafita. Like, it helps when the offensive line was struggling. If you can get by without having to blitz him, then obviously that makes it tougher. It's tough because even a lot of the interceptions Fafita has thrown, they haven't been because there weren't open receivers. Just he made a bad read and a bad throw. There was the one against Kansas State, he threw in the end zone. He was just late on the throw. It was wide open otherwise. The one he threw against Utah, it was to T-Mac in the fourth quarter or the end of the third quarter. He was double covered, and there was his tight end was running across the middle of the field wide open, no one near him. So, if you take away Tator McMillan, you're banking on Fafita still trying to get him the ball. And so far he has forced it to him, and that's led to most of their turnovers have been going to T-Mac, which, yes, throw it up to him in single coverage in certain situations. You don't need to force it to him when he's double covered when there's a tight end running across the middle of the field or one of your other receivers. So getting pressure on him is good, but he's also mobile. If you can turn Arizona one-dimensional and get them away from the running game, they've had a tendency to abandon the run a little bit earlier maybe than they should. At the same time, they have a new play clock for all of 2 games, and they've run the ball pretty good in those ones. So, don't let T-Mac get going. Obviously, cover him. But if you can bait Fafita into throwing the ball his way, disguise your defense where he doesn't see the safety that's going to be coming over the top, and he identifies it as one-on-one coverage. But, I hate to put it like this, but it almost feels like, to me, having watched Arizona, if Fafita can just get back to his normal self, that is quick reads, 1, 2, 3 steps, who's open, get the ball out, even if it's a short pass, take your 5, take your 6 yards, just move the ball forward and stop looking for the big play downfield. Then they're going to be a tough offense to stop no matter what, because you can get a pass rush, but if the ball's out in 3 steps, a 3-step drop, you're not getting home. So, I don't watch the all 22 film. We just see replays on TV, and pretty much every one of those interceptions, it's like, oh, there's that guy running across. Why didn't you throw it there? And Matt Atkins, the new offensive coordinator, play caller, did say in his press conference earlier today on Tuesday, he's like, there's no quarterback he'd want other than Noah Fifita. He loves Fifita. But part of the improvement is just going through trusting your progressions, trusting your reads. And that's easy to say, right? But it's like, okay, you drop back. If the running back is open in the flat with no one near him, get him the ball and let him make a play. If your tight end's open, get him the ball and let him make a play, even if it's only 6 yards. Now it's 2nd and 4 instead of trying to throw downfield, and you have 2nd and 10, like those 2nd, 3rd, and long situations you were talking about. So, I don't think there's anything special you do against Arizona's offense other than get a pass rush and make them one-dimensional. But more than that, you're really just hoping to force Fifita into making mistakes that he's been making all season.
Interesting. And one thing, we talked about this in my segment that went out earlier this week, was I think of Fifita as potential mobile quarterback, someone that could run it because he moves so smooth and he looks quick, but he doesn't rush all that often. He doesn't run with it. And so I don't know. It seems like BYU quarterbacks seem to have like some of their best running games against BYU. And I don't know if that's by design, if it's just like kind of we pick our poison or what, but they seem to do really well. So is that an element that you think he could add to his game, or is that really kind of outside of what he's comfortable with?
I mean, he's not a running quarterback. Like, that's not his game. Like, he's shifty, he's quick, he's a smart runner, and he's not slow. But even last season, he was great, and he wasn't a runner. He's a pocket passer, a smaller pocket passer, but he's mobile in the pocket. He can escape the rush, but running is not that's not his game. And when you're Arizona, you don't really want him taking hits if you can avoid it. So you don't want him running a lot. But there have been times, and Brett and I on our show, we've talked about it, where it's just like, if he just pulls the read, then it's like the edge is wide open. He had a couple of runs against Texas Tech, and it's mostly just scramble runs where it's like, okay, you can pick up 12 yards, go get him. But, would you like to see him add that to his game? It wouldn't hurt. Just occasionally, if you pull one of those on the read option and just make that defensive end think a little bit, instead of being able to crash down in the middle, then it might open up other things. So I think you'll probably start to see him running a little bit more. So he did it a little bit more last game, and it wouldn't shock me if he just, one read, 2 reads, go. Just pick up positive yardage. Don't put yourself in 3rd and long situations. Make it 3rd and manageable. Make it 2nd and short where you can open up the playbook a little bit and maybe take that deep shot without worrying about killing your drive. But no, he's not going to be a running quarterback. But if BYU struggles against mobile quarterbacks, it wouldn't shock me to see a little bit more running in their game plan, because he can do it.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see it, but it just that he hadn't. So let's flip to the other side of the ball now and talk about your defense. So what can we expect to see from this defense?
Yeah, Dwayne Aquina's the defensive coordinator. He's been around for a long time. He's very aggressive. The defense the last couple of weeks especially has been really good. They locked down Utah, as you guys probably saw and enjoyed, and held Texas Tech to, I think, their lowest point total of the season, and really did enough to win that game. They had a couple of bad plays that didn't go in their favor, but otherwise they gave up like nothing in the second half and let Arizona's offense, get back into it with, 3 points at a time. They are very aggressive. They do like to blitz. They do trust their corners, although their secondary is banged up right now. You have Takario Davis, who's an excellent cornerback, but Traden Stukes is one of their seniors. It's kind of like their star nickelback type. It came out he's lost for the season with a knee injury suffered against Utah. Gunnar Maldonado, one of their safeties. It looks like he's going to be out, if not for the rest of the season, for a little while too, after he suffered injury, I think, against Texas Tech. So, the secondary itself is a little bit banged up. That might change some things that they do with the pass rush, with sending extra guys. Genesis Smith, a sophomore, has a couple interceptions, had one against Utah, had one against Tech, he had one against Tech. He didn't have an interception. He had a fumble recovery. But either way, he's been very good replacing Stukes. He's, I think, going to be a really, really good player, Genesis Smith. But no, Aquino likes to have the defensive line really apply pressure, be aggressive, frees up the linebackers to make plays. Jacob Manu, Tay Brown are a couple of guys you're going to see out there. And that's the type of defense they like to run. They haven't been creating a ton of turnovers. They got a couple of fumbles against Texas Tech, had a couple of interceptions against Utah, but they haven't been the type of team that's been getting to the quarterback as often as you'd like. Although there's a lot of Arizona fans who will say that's because they get held without penalties being called. I know my guy Brett's always messaging me during games we're talking. He's like, how does Arizona lead the league in just not getting holding penalties, like just drawing them? And I know Brennan was asked about that after the Kansas State game, because there were a good many times a lot of like the reporters that I trust that do rewatches, and they're not biased reporters. They're like, yep, there was a hold on that play that wasn't called. There was a hold on that play, that big play that wasn't called. And that's going to happen, right? They don't call every single hold, but certainly I don't know how many holds Arizona has drawn this season compared to how many times they've gotten held on big plays, which to me says their pass rushers are pretty good, right? Like, Trey Smith has been very good. Kennedy has been very good, a transfer from Utah who didn't play much over there, and a couple other guys along that line. Like they're starting to find their stride, I think, in the front seven. And I think that was noticeable against Texas Tech and certainly against Utah. So the one thing they've struggled with up to this point of the season has been mobile quarterbacks. Kansas State's Avery Johnson is as mobile as they get. Even the guys before that against New Mexico and NAU, they had some success. Last two teams Arizona played didn't really have mobile quarterbacks, and defense looked really good. So right now, I think that would be the big flaw in their game plan is, or at least their style is, if they face mobile quarterbacks. But at the same time, they know that. So I imagine they're working to fix it. So expect an aggressive defense with some talented players in the secondary that's going to try to get after BYU for sure.
You mentioned mobile quarterbacks. I wouldn't say Jake Retzlaff is a true mobile quarterback, but he can run. In fact, right now he's our leading rusher. Part of that's because we've had so many injuries at running back that we've seen so many different people that we haven't seen them, any one player have a chance to really rack up the yards. But he's been used strategically to help when our run game has struggled, to be able to help open things up a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see that matchup there. So I guess where should BYU kind of look to attack this defense? Again, Jay Hill does not watch, I'm sure, this at all. So, but where would be BYU's best bet? Again, a team who has struggled when forced to make longer drives, but has that big chunk yard, big play potential.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like Arizona, right? With the way this season has gone, only BYU has more wins to their credit. In the defense, they've gotten burned on a couple of deeper passes, especially against Tech. They gave up one at the end of the first half, which led to a field goal. They gave up one in the fourth quarter, which led to what ended up being the go-ahead field goal for Texas Tech, the lead they would never relinquish. And they're kind of fluky type plays, but they have happened. And with Arizona, all the changes in their secondary, losing Gunnar Maldonado, one of your veteran safeties, you're losing Traden Stukes, who's one of your veteran corners. The more new guys you have in these spots, obviously there's more of a chance for lack of miscommunication. I want to say I didn't watch, and I don't think anyone asked Brennan in the press conference afterwards, even though it was like the big play and Arizona gave against Tech, the first touchdown, Takario Davis looked like he got beat on the play. And I'm watching the replay. I'm like, I'm pretty sure he is expecting safety help over the top. He kind of left his guy to go like you do, forced him to the inside on the post route. There was no one there because the safety bit on a different route. So stuff like that is more likely to happen with more inexperienced players in the backfield. And so you're kind of, if you can get those big plays, it might be there. Granted, Arizona's had now a week without Gunnar Maldonado, more time without Traden Stukes. So you'd like to think they'll work on these things. But for a lot of these players, until you see it happen, you really don't know what you're looking at. So if you would attack them that way. Obviously, with a mobile quarterback, you're likely to have more success based on what Arizona's done so far this season. But otherwise, just wear them down. They haven't been, again, I guess they got the 2 fumbles against Tech, which got them back into the game. So they have been timely, had the interceptions against Utah on the second half that really helped them pull away in that game. So they've been able to generate some turnovers, but they haven't been harass the quarterback, knock him down, force fumbles, big time sacks over and over again type of defense. They've just been solid that way. And in their last few outings, even against Kansas State, the defense was really good through 2.5, 3 quarters, and then it just fell apart. So, they've been a very solid defense, really, for all but the first game against New Mexico, where they gave up way too many points and yards, and that was against a mobile quarterback in the first game of the season when their offense scored like 60 points. So they probably didn't really feel that intensity or that urgency. But, it's been a good defense, and the holes have been mobile quarterbacks and a couple of those balls over the top.
And quickly, what will have gone right if Arizona comes away victorious on Saturday?
That's a good question because you look at their records. Obviously, BYU is you'd think they're a better team, but I'm not so sure talent wise that Arizona's not better than their record. And granted, you are your right, but like there's really good players on this Arizona team, especially offensively, and there's too many good players offensively for them to be struggling the way they have. So to me, Arizona wins this game because the defense plays like it has the last few weeks. BYU doesn't run the ball with their quarterback, and Arizona's defense gives up 20 something points, maybe makes it tough on BYU, and the offense starts to find its stride. That Fafita takes what's there available to him because there's always going to be someone open. If he has time to find them, take the short route, just move the ball up and down the field, kind of do what you can to keep the ball away from BYU. Don't turn it over and score a little bit more in the red zone.
Yeah.
Arizona's been getting into the red, and that's kind of like Jedd Fisch's second season. He's like their offense is like if they just converted even like 25% more of their red zone field goals into touchdowns, they're averaging 8 or 9 more points a game. Arizona got into the red zone. They said like 25, and I think 7 times against Texas Tech came with 1 touchdown. Like if they score just a couple more touchdowns instead of field goals, they win that game easily. So if they do stuff like that, if they just make good on the opportunities they have, and it's saying like, hey, be better than you've been, like then that's what went right. But it really is that way. Arizona doesn't seem that far off. I mean, they're a team that went up to Utah 2 weeks ago and smacked them around pretty good, right? And that was with an offense that was settling for field goals as well. So, if they can go out and just become a better team in the red zone, if they do that with a defense that plays as well as it has, I think Arizona can win this game. But because I don't know, I don't know BYU that well, but I don't imagine talent-wise they're far and away better than Arizona. I know what BYU was picked to finish 10th in the conference, or was it lower in the conference, and Arizona was picked to finish 5th, which doesn't mean anything now, especially, but just on a roster by roster level, Arizona's pretty good. So the question is, can they make good on the talent they have? And if they do, then I could see them pulling away with a win here.
Yeah. BYU 13th preseason.
13. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
But ratings mean nothing now, the preseason rankings. They don't mean anything now. You play the games, and BYU is deserving of their record. But just so much of Arizona, especially against Texas Tech, so much of what went wrong seemed like self-inflicted stuff. It's like the plays were there to be made, just make the plays. They just didn't. And they're plays that they have made before, and they have got players capable of making. So it's like, just do better. And it's not exactly strong analysis, but just do better, make what the plays that are in front of you, because you're going to have opportunities, and then you're going to score more points. And you score more points, you can win this game.
Yeah. I have to say this game does have me nervous because, I mean, this BYU team has shown to have the good mentality so far this season that they've really stayed focused, but it really worries me, coming and getting the distraction of the Big Noon Kickoff coming to town, a lot of hype around this game, moving up in the rankings, and then playing a team that, has lost a couple games and, lost to Kansas State, who BYU won big over, but recognizing that game was kind of an anomaly. BYU caught lightning in a bottle against Kansas State. And we know that Arizona has top high-end talent, especially on offense, that there are big plays that Arizona is capable of making. And now from what it sounds like, if the defense is really hitting its stride, that's a dangerous combination that if BYU doesn't come focused. So it is a game that I'm worried about. I still feel hopeful. I still feel good about, BYU this season, but it is a game that you do not want to overlook. Hoping that even though it's not a night game, that the crowd shows up and is loud and makes it tough on Arizona. Not that, Arizona hasn't played in loud environments, but certainly advantageous to BYU. But having said all that, and I should have, I don't think I asked you or told you ahead of time, but I was going to ask you, but if you had to make a score prediction for this game, how do you think it's going to turn out?
Oh man, we're recording this on Tuesday. I usually don't do my score predictions till like Thursday or Wednesday, but I haven't thought too much about it.
You can reserve the right to change later in the week.
Yeah, I might have 3 different predictions depending on where I'm writing it or being asked it. But I still believe in this Arizona team. And that doesn't mean I don't think BYU is any good. And I know Arizona more. And I do think Arizona, when I look at them, it's like if they just start playing the way I know they can, and it sounds like, oh, just, I know you can do it. No, it's like there's good players on this team who have made mistakes. Even against Texas Tech, T-Mac fumbled in the fourth quarter on what was Arizona's going to be their last drive with 2 minutes left. If he doesn't fumble, I'm convinced Arizona at least gets a chance to kick a game-winning field goal. And like those things happen. Fifita threw the interceptions. Those things happen. You can't take that away, but you can stop making those mistakes. And if those mistakes don't happen, Arizona wins that game probably by 17 points. And we're having a different conversation right now. We're looking at a 4-1 Arizona team that has a win over number 10 Utah on the road, and we're saying, okay, they could probably go into BYU and win that game. So I'm of the mindset that I think Arizona comes back and responds well to the loss that they had and plays a really good football game on the road. With kind of nothing to lose. And I know BYU coming off the bye, that might impact things too. But I think Arizona right now, for your listeners, I'll have them hate me, but you can, find my podcast. Maybe I'll give you a different score when we record ours. But I'll say Arizona wins 30-24. Like, I just think it's going to be that type of, I see it not being like a blowout, not being like this super high scoring affair, but a pretty well played 30-24 game for Arizona coming away with the victory. And everybody in Tucson saying, oh, Brent Brennan knows how to coach again, which has been like an up and down roller coaster depending on the week.
Yeah, Arizona did respond well to the last loss going into Utah, which was a huge win. Very impressive, especially after Utah was threatening to run up the score because of what happened last year. But your score prediction, 32-24, that was
32-24. 32-24.
Sorry, 32-24. Just yesterday recorded for this week, and we made our prediction.
30-24. That's what I'm going
said. With. 30- sorry.
Yeah.
Either way,
Arizona's still going to kick 3 field goals, but they'll get a few touchdowns too.
But where I was going with that though is my prediction was 31-24. So
for BYU,
yeah, but in favor of BYU. So we're
there you go,
similar on the score, but obviously
like a good football game. I think for Arizona, and like at some point you need to win games, otherwise you're obviously not going to the season you're hoping for. But I think people would like to see them play a good football game. They did that mostly against Utah. Still didn't score as much as they could have in the red zone. Still had an interception, but it was mostly, defense played well, offense did what it needed to do, special teams was good. It's like more of that. And if they go to BYU and they play a good game and just lose on a late field or just something, okay, it's not the end of the world. But if they play, it's hard to see them playing a good game and losing to a team that's not. I don't know. I mean, BYU's good. Are they great? We'll find out. But I think if Arizona plays a good game, they're capable of beating pretty much anyone that's on their schedule. And that's kind of how I see this one going.
Yeah. I feel like I'm saying this every week, but yeah, this is a week where we'll learn a lot about BYU, but also a lot about Arizona. Both teams have a lot to prove, I think, this week. And so definitely a good matchup. Definitely fun to be in conference with Arizona again. I'm really excited for this one, especially coming off a bye week. And I know Arizona's excited to get back to it, to get the bad taste of a loss out of their mouth. So Adam, I really appreciate you coming on and joining me, giving us some insights. Has been very interesting. Again, super excited to see how this plays out. Tell us one more time, and I'll make sure to put it all in the comments so people can find it. But where can everyone catch all your content?
Yeah, we're Wildcat Radio AZ. That's the podcast. We're on iTunes. We're on Spotify. We're on the Twitter machine at Wildcat Radio AZ is the handle. So we post all the stuff there. And you can find really good content, just written content at azdesertsforum.com. I do a weekly column that'll probably be coming out over the next couple of days. So, yeah, a lot of U of A stuff. If you're a U of A fan for a week or you want to know everything about, those are the places to find all the best stuff.
I love, and I imagine other people, other fans too, love to see as much, especially being in a conference with somebody now, having that again. Love having our opponents, getting to know them and getting their perspective. So leading up to this week, I definitely love getting as much insight onto this Arizona team. So I'll definitely, as I see your stuff come out, try to retweet it and everything out there so people can catch that and go get a little bit more insights into Arizona leading up to this game. So Adam, thanks again for watching. And again, if you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and then go check out Adam and Wildcat Radio 2.0 and all their content. But as always, go Cougs.